Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and let me first of all acknowledge your comments at the start of this meeting that we as a Justice Committee have worked well together. I've had the privilege of serving on this committee for the past 3.5 years, and I can say that while we've had policy disagreements, that we have worked well when we have studied issues each and every time. In fact, we've come back with unanimous reports. That's rather unusual, but I think it does speak to the fact that the members of this committee have integrity and have put aside partisan politics. So let me acknowledge that. But let me also say that this is not a partisan issue in as much as what this issue relates to goes to the heart of the rule of law. When we're talking about interference in an independent criminal prosecution, an attempt to potentially interfere with the independence of the Public Prosecutor Service of Canada, the PPSC. And while I agree with Mr. Fraser that Canadians deserve to be reassured, let me say that this motion put forward by Liberal members, Mr. Boissonnault, does little to reassure Canadians. For a Prime Minister who has talked about sunshine being the best disinfectant, I would have thought that the members on this committee, the Liberal members of whom I respect, would have been eager to get on with sunshine so that we could hear as quickly as possible from witnesses who may be involved in political interference. The fact is that you asked, Mr. Chair, how did we come to this point of an emergency meeting? We came here because when the Globe story broke, the most basic questions asked of this government related to this matter were not answered. Instead, we received non-answers. The Prime Minister's story, as Ms. Ray outlined, has changed. He first of all denied the story completely. He then shifted to speaking about whether or not there had been direction. He then, just 2 days ago, said that the fact that Jody Wilson-Raybould remains in cabinet speaks for itself. We know that the first thing that Minister Wilson-Raybould did in response was to resign from cabinet. Now, this motion provides no assurance that we'll get answers anytime soon. It contemplates a long, drawn-out process that I believe is intended to cover up, to further cover up this serious issue at hand. It's rather interesting that so many of the key players are omitted from this motion, including the Prime Minister's Quebec advisor, as well as Gerald Butts, who met with SNC-Lavalin officials on matters that pertain to justice and legal matters. I don't think it's a coincidence that those individuals are omitted from this list. I regret to say that the only conclusion I can draw is that there isn't an interest to get to the bottom of this matter. And I'm troubled by the fact that this motion would provide for an in-camera meeting to discuss a potential list of witnesses. So much for openness, so much for transparency, so much for providing the opportunity for Canadians to hear the arguments about why certain individuals should be called. If members of this committee object to Mr. Butts coming before this committee, they should make their case, and they should make it publicly, not behind closed doors. The fact is, Mr. Chair, and I do think it's important that we talk a little bit about some of the facts in this situation, because I've been disappointed that members of this government have said, well, these are just general allegations. Let's talk about what these allegations relate to. They are supported by a number of key facts, starting with in October of 2015, when SNC-Lavalin indicated that they wished to enter into a deferred prosecution agreement. The only problem that SNC-Lavalin had was that there was no provision in the criminal code to allow for a deferred prosecution agreement. So what did SNC-Lavalin do? Well, they proceeded to meet with officials at the highest levels of the PMO dozens and dozens and dozens of times. 14 meetings on legal and law enforcement issues, this from an engineering firm. What a coincidence. What a further coincidence it was when the government snuck into the Budget Implementation Act amendments, substantive amendments to the criminal code relating to deferred prosecution agreements. No consultation held by Justice Canada, no meaningful consultation on the part of this committee. It just was snuck in, hoping that Canadians wouldn't know the difference. Then we know that in October of this year, the Director of Public Prosecution Service of Canada announced that they would not proceed to negotiate a deferred prosecution agreement with SNC-Lavalin. Immediately following that, the Attorney General, the former Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, was fired at the first opportunity available to the Prime Minister. And then, of course, her comments about speaking truth to power, and then, of course, her decision to resign from cabinet altogether. So there are a lot of facts that underline these serious allegations, and it speaks to the need for transparency and openness, something that this motion utterly fails to do. It needs to be defeated out of hand.
Thank you very much. We next